Pigweed here. Today we review a stout and discuss Checkov. Hello and welcome to Beer and Conversation with Pigweed and Crowhill. Good evening, Crowhill.
Good evening, Pigweed.
What's on your mind?
Well, we're going to be talking about Checkov, and it was so sad when he died.
Well, I mean, sad when anybody dies, and why was his death so sad?
Well, he was so young, and he had such a promising career ahead of him.
Yeah, he died at 44, so that's pretty young.
44? No, he was 27 when he died.
Longinus. Oh, look, Longinus is here.
Look, hey,
Longinus. Hey, help me out. How old was Checkov when he died?
44.
Yeah.
He died of tuberculosis.
Yeah.
No. Anton had some sort of fatal car accident.
Anton Checkov in the 1880s?
No. Anton Yelchin.
Who's Anton Yelchin? We're talking about Anton Checkov.
Anton Yelchin played Checkov in the Star Trek movie.
Oh, boy, here we go. Not that again. All right, we're talking about Anton Checkov, the writer.
Oh, wait a minute. When I hear Checkov, I think Walter Koenig and Anton Yelchin. So it wasn't one of those guys who wrote these stories we're going to talk about today?
No.
Ah, gosh. Then I'm not so sure I like them as much as I thought I did.
Oh, boy. So, anyway, as you can see, it's time for P&C's Shortcut to the Classics.
Yeah, where we try to read the great books by the world's great authors so long as they aren't too long.
Yeah, we kind of like to keep it under 100 pages, so for this week it's going to be a few short stories by Russian author Anton Checkov.
Anton Checkov.
Yes.
All right, but not Pavel.
No. Tried that again. Okay, but this is not just any stout.
This is not. It's got to be a Russian.
It's a Russian Imperial Stout.
Russian Imperial Stout. Speed of Darkness.
Right, which, sort of like an India Pale Ale, is not brewed in India.
No.
Russian Imperial Stouts are not brewed in Russia.
Not brewed in Russia.
But they were brewed for the Russians.
Yes.
Isn't that right?
I think that's right.
The Russian court was
The
really
Russian court
into
liked
these
them,
British, heavy
yes.
British.
Yeah. So Russian Imperial Stout. This one, it says it's smooth with warm notes, with notes of chocolate and coffee. That's the idea.
Okay, from our nearby
Oliver.
friends.
Good old Oliver Brewing. Yeah.
And as you would expect, it's coming in at 8.5%.
Yeah.
That's where these guys live. And what do you got? Smoothness.
I'm getting a lot of smoothness. Definitely smooth. I'm getting some
Dark.
I'm getting definitely dark notes. It does taste probably more coffee than chocolate, but
Okay.
I'm getting both of them.
Yeah, that's really quite nice. It's not exactly a 1050, but I'll tell you what, that for this price you only get 4 1050s and four Rasputins,
Yeah.
or 4. This is a 6-pack.
All right. Well, this could be a camping beer.
You're right. Yeah.
Wouldn't
Haul one
mind.
of these in next month.
Put that in the backpack. Not so bad. All right. So Anton Checkov. What?
Anton.
By the way, Oliver Brewing, keep them coming. It's, good stuff. Appreciate you.
Yes. So, welcome, Longinus, our literary contributor.
Yes.
And
Thank you for helping us out here.
right, Anton Checkov. So, fast facts. Born in 1860, and as you said, only 44 years later, he died in 1904.
Yeah.
That is actually kind of sad.
And he's a doctor.
Amazing. His father was a serf who actually bought himself out of serfdom.
Do they have surfing in Russia?
Oh, jeez, we'll get to that. Not in Tagnarog, where he was born. So yeah, right. His family actually, after his father failed business, they moved to Moscow. He stayed in his town to finish school, then went on and to medical school, and somehow was a busy 6-day-a-week house calls doing that doctor.
And also wrote stories.
And also was cranking out stories.
Yeah, some of these people, they're just, I don't know if they don't sleep much or what it is.
Where
but
does the energy come from?
I know, yeah.
But it wasn't just, he didn't just, was that guy with 2 great novels.
He didn't sit around watching TV.
He was cranking them out once a week for a magazine, then became pretty well known. I mean, at 26, he gets a call from Tolstoy, who recognizes his talent.
Yeah.
And you're a doctor. I mean, pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a journalist, and he was writing, I think, before he was a doctor. So he could have gone, the writing profession,
Yeah.
without even the doctor. But he did that, and that actually helped him with his writing. Of course, all the experiences of being a doctor.
Oh,
He
yeah.
was
Interacting, going out to visit people's homes.
Yeah,
and,
finding out
I'm
what
sure.
life was really like.
Yeah,
for a lot
yeah,
of
right.
people,
It wasn't right. He wasn't an aristocrat. He
Right.
was sitting back in his
making stuff up.
yeah. No,
Well, he was making stuff up, but he was making it up based on actual experience of life.
Yes, and what's funny is as a young theater student, my theater 101, we all went on a field trip, and the first real play I saw at the Arena Stage in D.C. was The Three Sisters by Chekhov.
Can you move in a little bit? I'm not sure you're in the camera. There we go.
So I always associated him with strictly being a playwright. That's
Okay.
all I ever thought. It's
Right.
come to, no, he's close to 600
Lots of them.
short
short
stories.
stories.
This is his greatest short story, supposedly. It's a pretty thick book.
It is
It's a
50.
very thick book, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I couldn't, I'm like, how do I even gonna pick?
Right.
So I found one that had 5 in it, and I said, all right, we'll just
There
go
you
with
go,
this.
there's 5.
And the word five, great. Yes,
Yeah,
very good.
we'll let the publisher narrow down my stories for me.
Right.
'Cause I can't. How do I know the best 5 out of 500 are?
Yes, yours is Dover. Mine's FP Classics over there.
Right, so we-
Fingerprint Publishing, and they
may
have
different translations.
yes, and there's a lot of them in here. There might be 50 or more. All right, so what are we starting with?
Well, let's start up at the front with the Black Monk.
Oh yeah.
And all right, so quickly, what's the story here?
So the protagonist is Andrei Kovrin, and he goes visiting this family.
Yes,
And-
and this is the family that he grew up with.
Right.
His parents died, and he was raised by this family. But now he's he's a professor.
Yeah, he's a professor, scholar, philosopher. You would call him back in those days.
His doctor told him he needs to take a break, and so he said, "Well, I'll just go back and see my old adopted dad, and who has a daughter a little bit younger than
Yeah, right. And that's a normal kind of a setup.
him." Yeah.
Kind of know what's coming. But there's a big garden, and the household is really into managing this garden. They make their money raising peaches and other things to
Yes,
ship off
the
to
dad
Moscow.
is just totally obsessed. Works morning to night. Knows that if he were to pass this place wouldn't last 1 month without him, being on everybody's ass to
Right.
make sure it's just right, and has an idea about how to keep this thing running.
Right. Because his daughter Tanya, he would trust her to keep things going.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's like his most precious asset is this garden.
Yes, and the
And
idea
keep it
of
on. He's
leaving this
obsessed with
behind to just some other family who's going to run it into the ground. So,
But then doesn't the dad always have arguments with the daughter?
yes.
Sometimes I lose track of the names in these Russian
my
stories,
gosh,
you know.
the
But
names and the locations are.
yeah.
Olga.
But
Wasn't it Olga?
well, Tanya was the daughter.
Tanya.
But the dad is like they're having all these fights all the time.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's at first I was confused and I was thinking, well, who is it who's fighting with her? And then I realized it's the dad fighting with her, and Andrei, the lover, is the one who consoles her and tries to reconcile them and all that sort of stuff. So the dad is thinking, if I can just get these two married, then Tanya can take care of my garden and my fruit trees and all that kind of stuff, and everything will be lovely.
All right, so that sounds great. Well, off to the side, they don't know about, is he's just been thinking about the story from the Black Monk, and he doesn't know if somebody told it to him, or if he dreamt it, or what. But there is
It's supposed to be a legend.
this legend
Yeah.
1,000 years ago. This wandering, towering Black Monk.
There was some weird thing where it wasn't like he was bilocating or something, but there's something strange about he would be in one place, but like a ghost of him or an appearance of him would appear in these other places, and
Right,
people would see.
And then there would be an image of an image of an image.
Yeah, there would be images of him
Yeah.
in other places, and you get the impression reading the story that you're not really sure if this legend is really a legend or if he just made it all up.
Yeah.
You don't know.
And then,
We'll never know.
so this was a legend. Then, when the monk appears to him, then they have a little chit chat, and the monk assures him that he's brilliant. And
The funny
He's a
thing
genius.
is, yes, the monk assures him that he's brilliant, but the monk also says the legend, the mirage, and I are all the products of your excited imagination. I am a phantom.
Yeah.
He tells them right up front in their first encounter.
I'm not real.
He tells them, I'm a phantom. I'm just in your head.
Yeah, but that's a good thing. It's an indication
It's okay.
of your, this is Muhammad and Shakespeare, and he runs down all the, these
Right.
other brilliant minds.
Yeah.
He says, you don't have a pedestrian, ordinary mind.
Yes.
You have an exceptional mind.
Yes.
And gosh,
So I get that side
he
of it.
feels pretty good about that.
Yeah, because he's dealing with this question of the relationship between madness and genius,
Yes.
which is a perpetual theme.
Yeah.
And there does seem to be some connection.
There's something.
Yeah, there's some kind of a connection between being mad and being great in some respect. But what I don't get is that he feels flattered and happy that the black monk is telling him he's a genius and that he's one of God's elect and all these other kind of
Yeah.
things, all the while knowing that it's a product of his own mind. So basically, he's flattering himself and believing it, which is a little weird.
Yeah. So they get married, and he has not revealed the black monk to the wife.
Yes.
And then she's like,
Something's off.
I see you walking around talking to somebody.
Yeah, well, actually, the first time
Right?
she sees him, he wakes up in the middle of the night, right? And he's sitting on the edge of the bed. She's sleeping in the bed. He's sitting on the edge of the bed. The black monk is sitting in a chair, and he's having this conversation with the black monk. And she sits up and is like, who are you talking to?
All
And
right.
then he spills the beans.
Spills the
Right.
beans, and she's like,
I-
well, what? Then so what does she say after he spills the beans?
I am not hurting anybody.
Right.
Well, that's what he says.
That's what
But
he
what
says,
she-
but what does she say?
Oh, she's just terrified.
She says,
We got to do something.
we'll get you
about
some
it.
help.
Exactly.
Don't worry
I
about
knew something was wrong. Father knew something was wrong.
Right.
But
That's-
now, yeah,
we'll
now
get
we're
you.
going to the
We'll
doctor.
get you the proper help.
Yes.
Right. And in the chapter, the torture, he gets the help.
And he gets cured. Bunny ears quotes.
Did your chapters have names to them? Mine didn't. Mine were just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, oh, mine did.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Don't be afraid.
Okay, mine didn't have titles. That would have been interesting. But so actually, one thing that I wanted to back up to was when he's talking to this is in
5.
in 3, no, in 5, He says, "Strange that you repeat what often comes into my mind." This is another one of those things that I just don't get. He's excited that the monk is flattering him, even though he knows it's coming out of his own mind. And then he finds it strange that the thing that's coming out of his own mind repeats things from his own mind. It's an odd.
I think.
It's just showing us how crazy he is.
Yes, it makes sense in its
perverted
own
way.
madness.
Yes.
But
And in the dialogue about his own madness, they speak to him pursuing the eternal truth, pursuing
Right.
what is not of this world, pursuing, and that's really important to think about. And the hallucination, the phantom says, "You have sacrificed your health to an idea, and the time is near when you will sacrifice your life to it too. What could be better?" And Kovrin is just, he's okay with that. He's happy. And the other thing which is really fascinating is every time he meets this apparition, this phantom, this hallucination, it gives him deep joy.
Yes.
yes.
And that gets to this passage in chapter 8 that made it clear to me that he's probably suffering from manic depressive illness, because he says, he's talking about how, why you cured me with all this stuff. And he's saying that he was happier before he was cured. That he was happier when he was in his manic crazy state.
Yes.
Than he is once you've now drugged him and got him.
Right. Now, do you think this is something that, obviously that people experienced it at the time, but it wasn't defined in psychological terms in the 1860s?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
Right? So this is Chekhov just going, there are some people like this. I don't know what.
I don't know
it's
what
not called
it is.
manic yet, but this is what. Yeah, but there are some people who seem to get, inspiration and bouts of,
Right.
I also feel a little bit that he's not the genius that he thinks he is. He's smart enough to be a professor.
Right.
But with this manic on top of it, and the fact that he's flattered being
Yes.
flattered by the other people,
Yes.
he's probably of above average intelligence.
Yeah, but there are another thing that
Right.
goes along
Which
with
I think is part of the manic.
Yes, part of the manic is delusions of grandeur.
Yes.
You think that you're
100%.
way more than you are.
And
Yeah.
let's compare that to the father-in-law, right? Because the father has maybe not delusions of grandeur, but he's totally obsessed with an
Yes.
idea,
Yeah.
and to the point where that's the most important thing in his whole life.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. These
And-
peaches and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
He wanted to have somebody flogged for tying their horse up to a peach tree.
Right.
Right. There's one line in here that doesn't really have much to do with the plot, but I liked it. When the main character is talking about the father, he says, "He's not good. He's just good-natured." I thought that was kind of
That's
clever.
pretty good.
So, the end of it, what does the Phantom?
So
Well,
they
we have to
separate. So
go
they
to another
separate.
thing. Yeah, they
right?
separate, and he's with another woman. Right.
Yes, an older woman who's, I don't know, a little bit more of a caretaker, I guess.
By now, he's not living with Tanya, but with another woman who was 2 years older than he was, and who looked after him as though he were a baby.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
And then he gets a letter from Tanya that says,
Right.
you were the worst thing in my life. You killed
You killed
my
my father. Right.
Your stepfather, in all intents and purposes, and I hate you for it.
Yeah. And then one thing that came up interesting toward the end, Kovrin recognized clearly now that he was a mediocrity.
Yeah.
He really resigned himself to it. I thought
Yeah.
that was very
Yeah.
interesting.
Was it during his cure he resigned himself to the mediocrity?
Yeah, right. So now he's cured, and he's just a dullard like everybody else.
Right. He's part of the herd.
Yeah, and then so in the end, he calls Tanya's name, falls to the floor.
He has some sort of respiratory illness or something,
Right.
and he's coughing up blood.
Right.
Calls her names, fall to the floor, and then the black monk appears.
Black monk appears,
Right.
and so read the last line. See if it's
When Name woke up and came out from behind the screen, Kovrin was dead, and a blissful smile was set upon his face.
Right, because he finally.
And his face had stiffened in a blissful smile. You can't even get through one
I
sentence.
know. They got
These translations.
different translation problems, but
But yeah, so he was like, yeah, a little bit of manic. He told me I was a genius.
Yeah.
And I can die a happy man.
it's actually not a happy story, but it's a very interesting story.
Yes, it is just in the way that it puts its finger on a psychological matter that they probably had not, clarified at the time.
Are there any happy Russian stories? I wonder.
I don't think so. Yeah, and I think that it's important to think the black monk. What does the black monk represent? I mean, he represents the obsession of Kovrin's obsession to the eternal truth, and he's like, yeah, it's okay, just keep on moving forward.
Yeah,
And-
why was he a monk, for example?
Well,
Right.
because I think that he's tying it to what religion has done for humanity, or what the religion, saints and mystics and preachers and
Well, he's also trying to. He's trying to. He has these delusions of grandeur. So the idea of him being chosen of God and being, somebody who's looking out for the good and all that other kind of stuff, that kind of fits along, because people who have manic depressive illness, have delusions of grandeur, often think of themselves as Jesus Christ or something like
Chosen.
that. Yeah.
All right, so on to the house with the mezzanine. We have a painter who doesn't
No
get a
name.
name.
Yeah, no name.
He's a landscape painter.
Right.
And he represents the idle rich. Well, with Chekhov, nobody just represents anything, but he's an idle rich man who wanders around and comes across a balcony with a couple of ladies, and he's living with a guy, right? He's living in the house with on the same land as a friend, and he knows these gals, and they are
Lydia and Xenia.
yeah, and Lydia and Zenda, or Xenia.
So in mine it's Xenia, Zhenya,
Okay, yeah,
right? Yeah.
and she's called
Lyra.
Lydia the first 2 times, but within the house she's called. You know how the Russians.
Russians
do
have
this
like
for
3 different names. They have their
Yes.
baptismal name and they have their other.
Right, and then there's a term of endearment name. So
Yeah.
you know your mom will call you different.
I used to work with this guy named Alexander, and I always knew him as Alexander. I go to his house for a party, and everybody's calling him Sasha. I'm like,
Yes,
who's Sasha?
He's Russian, so he goes over there, and he's got plenty of time on his hands,
Right.
And they're the idle rich too, in some, well, maybe not idle, but they are rich too.
Yeah, they're rich to the younger one, Xenia. Fascinated with him, and he butts heads with the older one, Lydia, who is out and about.
She's sort of strong-willed and passionate about, like, involved in social causes. and
Yes,
things.
very
Right.
much. Yes,
Yeah.
that's her. That is. So let's move through this one quickly because
Yeah.
it's just she thinks that a person needs to dedicate their lives to doing deeds. So she's
Right.
she's teaching. She's working at the Zemstova, which is like a local government.
Yeah.
That you need to get out in the world and be an activist.
Mhm.
And he is on the other side, which is more of you need to spend your time nurturing your soul
Yeah.
with engaging in the arts and music and that kind of thing.
Right.
And then they butt heads and
It's very easy to see those kinds of conflicts between
Yeah.
the doer and the thinker.
Yeah.
That's a classic kind of a conflict. And this idea of the person who's meditative and artistically inclined and the person who's more, type A and going out and trying to do things.
Yes.
And it's very easy to see young people get caught up in that conflict, and it's very easy later in life to see we need both of you.
and Chekhov is both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right? So he's 100% in the community, saving lives with his science and his medicine.
Right.
And then, of course, when
Writing
he's not doing
stories.
that-
That's right.
So I think this is just him just kind of working out not everybody can be Chekhov.
Right.
Where should one spend their time? And it's unresolved,
Right.
He's-
As a lot of his stories
That's
are.
pretty
It's
much
all
all.
the
So,
stories.
and so he asks Xenia for her hand, right? She says, that sounds great. And then a little boy comes up with a note and
Right.
says, you got to go.
Yeah. Lyra didn't like that at all.
No.
You're not getting around with that. That artsy guy. He's not doing it.
No.
No, he's not
That-
committed
doesn't
to
have
the
the income
community
for-
or
right.
what. I don't what. So anyway, she says, I told my sister all about it, and she said that ain't happening, and I can't disappoint her, so this is over, and kind of ends like that, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, all right.
Yeah. Pretty much.
And I
so.
never
He
saw
goes-
the Volchanikovs again. I went to the Crimea and
The love story that ends with a big nothing.
with a big
Yeah.
right. So I think it was more just about that, that conflict that he had. Let's
Right.
keep,
Yeah,
let's keep
it's-
let's keep it moving here.
Okay, what else we got?
Yeah, otherwise we're never gonna get through these.
All right.
I don't know what's.
What do you want to do? Gooseberries, Peasants?
Let's do Peasants because that's also a quickie.
Yeah. So Peasants is just plain depressing.
Yeah, it is.
So Nikolai is injured.
You don't want to say his last name?
No.
I don't either.
Yeah.
Nikolai's
Can
injured.
you say it, right?
Loses all. He works as like a waiter in a
Yeah,
Russian
he's in
restaurant or
Moscow.
something
So he
like
grew
that.
up as a peasant.
Yeah.
He made it to the big city, but
Right.
he
As
never.
a waiter, and was completely
Yeah.
happy about that.
Yeah, he was glad that he was out, but he fell ill, and they fired him.
Right.
So he's
He
like,
had to go
well,
back.
He
what else
fell
you gonna
ill, and not only did he fall ill, he used up all of his own and his wife's savings.
Yeah.
Like, just totally had nothing. So the only thing he could do is go back to live with his peasant parents out in wherever. I don't even
Yeah.
know where they
It was
live.
a
where
hut
they were.
with how many people living in that house?
do? Zukovo.
Reminds you of the movie version of Willy Wonka. Where the grandparents are all laying in one bed. Two
foot to foot.
foot to foot.
yeah. It's about like that. So
Yes.
I like he walks in. Oh, look here, kitty. He can't hear you. He's deaf. Oh, that's a shame. Yeah, from the beatings. It's like, okay,
Yes.
here we go.
And that sets things up
That
pretty
does,
well.
and that's pretty good.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
from there, the
The
bro-
uninterested dull girl tells you about the cat who's deaf from beatings.
yes, yes, and then the drunken husband comes in.
Who roars around beating on people, and no one will stand up to him. It's just the whole situation is horrible.
It is, and then I don't know what building is it that some building catches on fire,
Right.
and then some student who doesn't even live there
Right.
is the only one trying to put the fire out, while these drunken louts are like, yeah, it's a shame about that fire.
Right.
Yeah.
They're illiterate, they like to hear somebody who can read scripture. They can't, but none of them are
And
particularly
they get all
religious.
sentimental about it.
Yes.
The mom gets really sentimental about it. She doesn't know anything. She's
No,
like very
they're all-
ignorant.
they're
But
all
like
She's very
certain
religious,
words,
right?
very religious, but certain words like make her cry and stuff. And it's like, it's basically
It's
showing,
a downer.
it's basically showing peasants in a very negative light.
Yes, which I think is the story.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of sentimentality about the Russian soul and the peasantry,
Yeah.
And there's also that little conflict of, these are free peasants. They're not serfs anymore. And they're like, oh, God, wasn't the serfs' day great?
Yeah, exactly. So this is 1880s when the story is written. The emancipation of the serf was 1861. So you have young people in the house who grew up not as serfs. The older people remember serf days. And there's a little bit of, well, at least we had something to eat, and we had,
Well,
he says,
that's something.
So that's but I think there's, when you have like these impressionistic paintings of the peasant in the field, and it's like, out there in nature. Well, yeah, from your carriage,
Right.
it probably
It
looks
looks
lovely.
that way. You don't
And-
realize how much their back hurts and how they have worms in their
Right.
feet and all the other kinds of things.
Yes,
going on, right?
their lascivious lifestyles and lots of vodka drinking going on. The drinking
Exactly.
of
They're already dead poor, and they're wasting so much of their
so
money
much of money on vodka.
on vodka, right?
So
I would. What,
I
right?
think it
mean,
was
if your
just-
life is so terrible and you could spend 2 hours drunk and in someplace else.
Yeah,
that's
right.
the
If
way
you
to do
weren't
it.
drunk and spending your money on vodka, maybe you could make
Maybe you
your
could
life
buy a little bit of bread.
Make your life a little bit less miserable. So I just think it's him pushing back on the sentimentality of peasant life,
Yeah.
because his father was a serf who actually he bought himself out of serfdom, but this is within his lifetime,
Right.
And he wasn't Tolstoy, who was a count.
Yeah.
And he used to go out to those villages and
Right.
be the doctor for them. And if they couldn't pay, he would still doctor them. He was more like Lida than in that kind of way.
All right, do you want to do gooseberries real quick?
Yeah,
before
real
we get
quick.
To the
So
lady?
gooseberries. The funny thing about gooseberries is the beautiful servant girl. That's the thing that stands out to me in this story. Because there's a lot of things to talk about gooseberries, but the thing that people will say: don't put a gun on the table in scene 1 unless you shoot it in scene 3.
Right, that's Checkov,
right?
yeah.
Well, don't put a beautiful woman in a story unless something is going to happen. Unless somebody's going to fall in love with her, unless it's going to cause a problem.
Right.
And that was like, I'm reading Gooseberries and I'm thinking, okay, these two guys walk into this house and this woman is so stunningly beautiful that they just look at one another in amazement, right? And then nothing happens. Like, she walks around the house and she's beautiful and graceful, but
Right.
she's not part of the story in any other way except being there as the unattainable, beautiful girl.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'd have to put some thought into it, because there's no way. I mean, Chekhov invented that. Chekhov,
Right.
that is his quote. So there's no way that she is there just as window dressing. I haven't really put enough thought into it. So anyway, but what's the bigger part of the story is it's two guys walking along
In
and
the rain.
he's like, weren't you going to tell me that story? Oh yeah, I got a story for you. Starts to rain.
Yeah.
They go to a guy's house who lives nearby. He says, I haven't had a bath since spring.
Yeah, he's so dirty. When he goes to wash off, like, the water gets all brown, and yeah.
It's just,
Isn't that funny?
I don't know how that fit in.
I don't either. So one of the guys, I forget the guy with the story, Nikolai. Is that who it is? So they go. So they swim. They get changed. Then they come in. They have some tea.
Right.
The beautiful servant.
They're going to spend the night.
They want to spend the night. They're like, all right, where's this? All right, can you get back to that story?
One thing that I thought was an interesting theme in this one was the idea of just being totally unaware of the happiness of other people. It was kind of like it was obliviousness to the suffering of other people. Like the one guy who went swimming goes out swimming, and they're just supposed to be washing off to get ready for
And
dinner.
one of his friends like, all right, that's enough.
Yeah, I know. Come on, you're done. Get out of there. You know?
But he was loving it, and he was just having this joyful moment.
And then the gooseberries themselves.
So hold on,
Right.
but tell his story. His story is that he and his brother grew up in the country.
Yeah.
And they said once you've had a taste of the country,
Yeah.
you always want to be there. And his brother slaved as an accountant or something, right?
Oh, for
Hated
40 years.
Yes.
He was out there.
Dreaming. He only
goodness.
read one. He read the newspaper every day, but what was the only thing he read? It was the real estate section.
Okay.
Where he could fantasize.
I don't remember
about,
that part.
Yeah,
but
yeah. Where he could, where he could, so 300 acres and and it's got a river and so he could think of all the things that he wanted in the house and the servant house and the trees and the water and gooseberry bushes.
Yes.
And ultimately, he marries a rich woman. He's so stingy that he basically starves her to death. She dies in about 3 years.
And
now he's got the money, buys his place, and finally sees his brother, the guy who's telling the story, for the first time in many years.
he seems very, very happy.
And he seems very happy, and they eat the gooseberries. But what's special about the gooseberries?
They're not very good.
They don't taste very well.
No,
Right.
but
he keeps saying, "Oh, so delicious, so delicious."
right. So I mean, so that's why it is called the gooseberry. So
Yeah.
And the brother reacts in that people delude themselves with fake happiness.
Yes.
Which is what this guy is doing because his gooseberries are not very good. But you know what? It's something that he's always wanted. And so this is the dynamic. This is the just like in the other two stories, you've got people with competing ideas about how how one should live, and this blissful ignorance makes him mad.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is not, you don't see all of the suffering around you. That's a person should live with the full awareness of how much suffering is going on around them.
Exactly. So
Right?
that's the issue. Is that people you
But
can't
why?
try to be happy in isolation. I'm happy. I'm not aware of everything else going on around me. That doesn't work.
And I think it sets up the comparison between happiness and meaning. I mean, I think this is totally
Yes.
about meaning. And the fact is, did this guy who slaved for 40 years as an accountant, starved his wife, moved out there in the country, and now is eating gooseberry. Is that really a meaningful life?
Right.
Even though he's happy?
The other thing he wanted like either a river or a lake. And the river's totally polluted from some factory upstream. But, daggone, he's happy.
Yeah.
And,
Happy swimming in it. Yeah.
yeah.
Is
And so...
Is that the end all be all of the
Of
meaning
life.
of life?
Yeah, but the contrast would be then what? You're supposed to never be able to never be happy because you know that there are other people who are not happy, and so it's selfish of you to be, right? I mean, he doesn't make this easy for anybody.
Right.
Right.
So I think
No,
this
so
is
he
what-
just lays it out there, and
Yeah.
and there's no resolution.
No.
It's just a conflict.
there's never a resolution.
And-
Yeah.
right.
No. Yeah.
So this one line in here, the guy's telling the story, and the fact that lovely Pelagia was moving noiselessly about was better than any story. It reminded me of a line from Ian Anderson, lead singer from Jethro Tull solo album. She was a good enough reason for a party. I'm thinking, she's like better than the story.
Right. He didn't like the story.
No.
He was like, why don't you tell a story? Because there are these paintings in the room that are, people that had lived there before.
Looking down.
Right, and they're all
Yeah.
watching them.
Yeah, he's like,
Yes.
well, what about a story of happy people doing fun things?
Right.
And this is your dumb story.
That's
The
the
other
best you got.
and the stinky guy who's now cleaned up, the host.
Right.
He's got to go to bed because he's got to get back up and tend to the farm.
And not bathe for another 3 weeks.
Well, I think if you look, if you compare it, why would a guy that had such a beautiful woman in his house be so dirty he made the water brown?
He was so dirty.
Apparently,
Since
not
the
that kind of
spring.
ambition.
Right? He
Yeah.
didn't say for 2 weeks.
Right.
Since the
Just
spring.
for-
Since last season. But you're here.
That's pretty dirty. I guess I'll wash up now.
Maybe I'll wash up. Okay, all right. Now,
The lady with the dog.
the toy dog. The little dog.
What is your
pet
version?
dog.
Everyone,
Toy dog.
yours is toy dog. Mine's the lady with the dog.
Okay. So,
So Dmitry, Gurov, and Anna,
yes.
both
Yeah,
unhappily married.
Both unhappily married, both on vacation in Yalta.
Yes.
And he does not have a high opinion of women.
He's a player.
He
Yeah.
is what you would call a 19th century player.
Yeah.
He's married, doesn't particularly care for her or care for women in general.
Right.
But he
just
does,
uses them.
which is weird because he says he really can't stand the company of men. He really only enjoys being around women, but he doesn't respect them.
Right.
Yes. It kind of reminds me of the short story Chase Clarissa.
Oh, we're going to get to that.
All right.
Because, yes, Cheever is the Chekhov of the suburbs.
I think so.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
that's the and now I get it.
Mhm.
But we'll come back to that.
Okay. So the fact that they're meeting in a resort town, basically,
Yeah, it is.
it starts off with Dmitri he only views women as playthings.
Yeah.
And they're both unhappy in their marriages, and they meet in this resort town. They have an affair, and it sort of symbolizes transient, temporary pleasure, right? And then it ends, and she goes,
right. He says he can't. First of all, he says he can't stand him, and then he goes, but he can go 2 or 3 days without him. And he's very good. He's just that's his wheelhouse. That's just where he's comfortable is wooing,
Picking up women, right.
wooing, picking up women, and then they're
he's apparently very good at it.
inevitably disappointing because that's just how human relationships are. You know, as soon as you get to see the warts on somebody, you don't care for them anymore. And however, however, he meets her. In terms of translation, let me just bring this up. So he goes to bed at night because he doesn't think much of any women at all, but he just thought of her. Right? He couldn't stop thinking about Anna, and he says, he thought of her slender white neck, her pretty gray eyes. There's something touching about her.
Yeah,
Hold on. But this is my thing about the other version that I listened to. Is there's something pathetic about her, and I'm going, hold on. The whole story turns on this translation in a way.
Yeah, right. Pathetic. That's a funny.
Yes. I mean, to me, it sends the whole story in a slightly different direction.
Yeah.
Just because of the translation.
Yeah, because the question is, why is he, after having all these women,
Yes.
why is he suddenly attracted to her?
Well,
and,
that's
wants to follow her?
that. All right, that's the first question I want to get to. Let's get through the story.
Yeah.
Is because I didn't get it. I didn't see that one special thing about her. But let's finish their story. He woos her, and how about that steamy bed scene? You're like, what just happened? Right? There's nothing.
Oh,
right?
I know. Yeah, it's
He
like Captain Kirk pulling on his boots the day afterwards.
Right.
You know what happened, but there's no.
Right, and that's about. I think I don't need the Jane Eyre with all the
Exactly.
neck kissing and
Yeah.
all of that.
Yeah.
All right, I get it.
We get it. We understand. How
Yeah,
we
I know.
understand how that works. It's fine. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
And she says, "Why do you not respect me?" He doesn't respond for half an hour. He eats some watermelon, and he's like, "Why would you say that?" So I guess this is her first affair.
I guess. Yeah.
I guess,
And his
but
300th.
and
Right?
it's 300.
Yeah.
So you figure what's gonna go. What's gonna
Because
happen.
if he did respect her, he would not have taken her to bed.
Right.
Right.
And well, I mean, apparently you wanted to, or we wouldn't be sitting here right now. So,
Yeah.
well, what's wrong with that? And and who knows what he's thinking at this time? But then so this goes on for I don't know what a week,
Like a week or something. Yeah.
a week, and then
It's a holiday. You know?
yeah, she gets her husband was supposed to meet her. Instead, she gets a letter saying he can't. And,
Right. She has to go back
and
to
she
Moscow.
called him.
Right.
Well, she called him a lackey in this version and a flunky in the other one.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Either one.
I don't remember the language precisely, but she didn't have a high opinion.
She
of her
didn't have a high
husband.
opinion of her own husband, and so she goes back and goodbye forever.
Yeah.
And he
And
goes
she's
back
thinking
to
it's
Moscow,
over. She's thinking
and
it's
so
over.
is he.
Yeah.
And he's walking around going,
I can't live without that woman.
can't
Yeah.
stop thinking about
Right.
that woman.
Yep.
And he's doing around. He's got his normal day life and his evening life and all of that, and he goes to, he goes to try to tell his friend, God, dude, I met this chick in Yalta, and he seated himself on the ledge and suddenly called out, "Dmitri!" Yes, you were right. The sturgeon was tainted. So he's like, that's not the part of the story that
That's
I
not
thought
the part of the story you were supposed to be paying attention to. That's,
I just thought that was great because it's building up to him, just getting it off his chest.
Yeah.
Well, he doesn't, and it eats at him, and so he does know what town she's in, and got her last name from some registry or something, a German last name, and he goes into town, and it goes to the fancy hotel, right?
yeah, and then finds out that she's going to the theater that night.
Well, he finds her house.
Yeah.
And then he goes and hangs out outside the house and sees the dog.
Right.
So I think, for me, I was kind of wondering, like, well, how did the dog even get into the title of the story?
Yeah.
But he
That's
does.
because that's why he found out that she was there.
Yes,
right?
he found out that she was there. He hears some piano playing and thing, and he's like, all right, so this is the big premiere. This is the kind of thing that she's going to be at the Geisha, the theater.
Okay.
Right? Opening night.
Right.
Got a pretty good feeling that she's going to be there. And she is.
So he goes there, he runs into her, and she's appalled.
Yes.
She's like, wait a minute, that was a mistake. That was a one-time thing. It's over, it's done. Why are you here coming back into my life?
Right. And also admitting this kind of the same thing. And I haven't stopped thinking about you.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, but she is just frightened of him. She runs away. She doesn't want to have anything to do with him. But once he catches up with her and kind of corners her and they talk, she admits that she can't. She's been thinking about him as well.
Okay, I'll come see you.
And then they basically, now their affair is going on in Moscow under the nose of her husband. Right.
Right. Who? Well, yeah. There was a great line about who he didn't believe her or not believe her, or something like that. Where she says, this is how women can always get away with this move. Female trouble. That means
Right.
you're not gonna question me about that. And he's like, he kind of believed her and he kind of didn't, and well, oh well. And so she goes.
So in this one, we do see a big character development in the part of the main character, Dmitry Gurov. He basically goes from being a player to being devoted to one woman. It's not his wife, but he's devoted to Anna.
Yeah, and it, as Chekhov is wont to do,
Just ends.
Doesn't resolve itself.
Just ends.
Doesn't resolve itself. They're like, well, now what are we gonna do? Right?
Just carrying on this affair, and we don't know, like, if the husband ever finds out. We don't know if they're happy. We don't know anything.
Towns.
Right.
They're, how is this even going to work out? But neither one of them tries to shut this thing down.
Right.
So that's
just the way it ends.
That's just the way it ends, and it is. Hold on, before I get one thing before I. First off, yes. What did you get something special about Anna that he's never seen in another woman? I don't think he gave us that.
No, I didn't
Chekhov
notice anything.
No, he's had plenty of slim, attractive women who are, I don't know, wasn't particularly bright.
Maybe I need to read it again. Maybe it wasn't something in her. Maybe it was something in him. Maybe it was something in him that changed, and rather than viewing women as these transitory pastimes, that he was beyond that. I don't know.
Well, Chekhov says, sitting side by side with the young woman who in the dawn seemed so beautiful, Gomov, appeased and enchanted by the sight of the fairy scene, the sea, the mountains, the clouds, the wide sky, thought how at bottom, if it were thoroughly explored, everything on earth was beautiful. Everything except what we ourselves think and do when we forget the higher purposes of life and our own human dignity. So I think that, in some ways he puts a twist on it, but that may be the epiphany. He may not have fallen in love with something about her, but fell in love with a moment that he was with her.
Right, but I think he... Yeah, yes. But I think he's always been in love. He loves the conquest.
Yeah, he loves being with the woman.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't love the woman. He loves being with her.
Right.
And he accepts the inevitable fact that this is
It's going to break up. It's temporary.
Yeah, you're going to get to know each other, and then you're going to realize the person's not that great, and that's just how these things work. And then you move on. So I did not quite get what the spark was, but how about this for an analysis? So, I did like a copy and paste of the storyline just so I could remember the names and the places, and then I ran across this analysis, and I think Crowhill, you're going to enjoy it. The short story examines the conflict between conformity to marital and gender conventions and faithfulness to one's inner principles. Focusing on an adulterous relationship, the story challenges the patriarchal mindset, criticizes the arbitrariness of prescribed gender roles and marriage conventions, and explores the meaning of genuine relationships. Chekhov's protagonists expose the crippling effect of societal gender roles on men and women in marriage. Oh, God.
Okay, so just the basic fact that they're using the word gender roles.
Yes, you already know.
You already lost me.
You already
on
know.
Yeah.
That to me, that is.
It says absolutely nothing about Chekhov, by the way.
It says nothing. This is a grad school femlit major who is now teaching 101, and she can copy and paste this into any criticism of any book where there are couples.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is you mean these? What is this? These marriage conventions? You mean those stifling marriage conventions that say you shouldn't cheat on your wife?
Right.
Is that the ones that you're talking about? Or the gender ones where men wear pants and women wear dresses? I mean, what?
Yeah,
that was just terrible.
That was feminist garbage. But yeah, so the Crowhill rule is don't use the word gender. Wait, unless you're talking about language.
Oh, yeah.
Unless you're talking about language, you can talk about gender. Otherwise, it's sex. That's the word.
Yes, and how about when you hear patriarchal?
Yeah, usually that means shut
turn
up.
your ears off. Yes.
It just goes to show how far away they've gotten from the literature.
Yes.
Do you think that's what Chekhov was saying?
Well, I mean, they did that with feminism. They did that with Marxism. They're doing it with faddism. They're doing it with all of that stuff. And it's like, why can't we just... I mean, this is an incredible story. He writes these incredibly wonderful, beautiful sentences that are so imaginary. And why do we have to...
Right. It's like the guy in Fiddler... Is it Fiddler on the Roof where the guy shows up and comes up with all these fanciful interpretations of the Old Testament? Is that... Am I thinking of the right movie?
I don't know.
I'm not sure. But the idea is... This is just imposing your crazy ideology on a story rather than letting the story speak.
That was just the most frustrating analysis I've ever heard. Now, better analysis. Longinus, let me get back to the Cheever and the Chekhov of the suburbs.
All right.
So
Chekhov of the suburbs.
So, yes, first off, the lack of resolution, right?
Yeah.
Cheever's stories are they're little slices of life.
Yeah.
And there's a conflict to them, and then in the end, it just kind of
All I can think of when you say Cheever is the swimmer guy.
Yeah, I know.
But Chase Clarice is 100%. So Baxter, goes to that isle that goes on vacation, and there's that young woman that he's just got to have.
Oh yeah.
And he finds the key to get her.
He tries different types of.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of parallels.
Buys her
to
gifts.
stories.
He does, and then he figures it out, appealing to her intelligence.
Right.
Which is not because she was on the beach. She goes, "Wow, those rocks have grown since last year."
Right.
What? But that doesn't stop him from pursuing. But yes, there's a kind of a roguish womanizer.
Yeah.
There's the lack of the lack of clear resolution. I just think that it is.
That is an interesting parallel between those two stories. Yeah.
All right. Can I ask you one last thing before we go?
Okay.
So, mostly the idea of the shortcut is to find that short book which represents the author who is famous for long books.
Yeah.
But in many cases, like today, what we've done is take a handful of short stories. And these are our short story collections so far. So here, help me out here. We've got Hemingway, Twain, Chekhov.
Right. Faulkner, Edgar Allan Poe, Tolkien was not short stories.
Yeah, that was Leaf by Niggle and the other.
Yeah, right, but he had longer works that we.
Yeah. No, that we read.
But we read the short.
We read the
story,
short
right?
stories.
Yeah, okay.
Jack London, Ray Bradbury,
Yeah,
Asimov.
right. Yeah.
What else we got here?
Okay, Lovecraft. John Cheever.
Okay,
right?
so my question is, you're going on vacation, and you're going to take one of these collections with you and read additional stories that we didn't cover in the show. I'll
Right.
give you. You can take one or two with you, and who you taking with you?
Oh, wow. So is it
Yeah.
winter or summer? If it's winter, I'm taking Jack London.
Okay, yeah, good.
But I really enjoyed Chekhov. So
you got another 55
I've
to
got
read.
got a bunch in there, so I'd probably take Chekhov.
That's pretty good.
What do you say?
I think one of them would be Tolstoy.
Okay.
Read more Tolstoy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
I really like Mark Twain, but I've already read a lot of Mark Twain, so that doesn't.
Yeah. So I think I would do Cheever, and then just to have a contrast, Bradbury.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to have something that's very not Cheevery.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot more of these stories out there.
There's a lot more to read.
Cover. Yes.
I know.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we're putting together a pretty good. You know what? I think we have this new offer, by the way. If you want to get the complete set of all the shortcuts of the classic books, yes, we're selling them at a special reduced rate. So just contact us at pigweedshow@gmail.com, and we'll tell you all about that.
Very good. Okay.
Right.
And, I would say read. In this case, if you haven't read Chekhov and Cheever, read some Chekhov first, and then read some Cheever.
And actually,
you'll get
reading those two stories, The Lady and the Dog,
and Chase Clarice.
Yeah.
Yes, read those two.
Yes, those two alone.
There you go. All right.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks so much for listening to Beer and Conversation with Pigweed and Crowhill. Remember to visit us at pigweedandcrowhill.com or send us an email at pigweedshow@gmail.com.